All right, we're gonna try to make this quick. Back again with another BB Reads. It's been a dog minute since I've done one of these. But we here today. I'm eye-kuh, and what we do on BB Reads is I go over and share some thoughts that I have around some of the reads that I grabbed from my library grab and go, and or any other way that books can find me. If you are a BB who likes to read, please hit me up, and please, you know what I'm saying, we can try to collaborate on doing some BB reads together, because I know I'm not the only one who reads. Okay, this time around, to keep it simple, I am going to do some graphic novels that I picked up. I've had these for a minute. I've had these for a very, very, very long time. I know the library is pretty tired of me renewing these. And that's on me. And that's why I'm in the car, in the library parking lot as I speak, so that I can return these immediately after and do some other stuff at the library. But that's it. So I'm gonna jump into it. I'm not gonna waste any time. So I got graphic novels and one manga. This is considered a manga. And if you don't know mangas, what I like about mangas, you have to read them backwards compared to how you read other books, standard books in the States, maybe in the Western world, I guess. But yes, so this one is called I Don't Know How to Give Birth, and I thought this was pretty funny. I thought it captured me from the title, because it just seemed very funny. And I didn't do when I did The Way of the House Husband, but sometimes mangas can just be very like interesting and silly like this, and so like The Way of the House Husband got me there. And so when I saw the title of this one, I was like, this should be very silly. So I Don't Know How to Give Birth. And it really just, it's a humor manga, and it really just kind of illustrates, it's based off of the actual author of the book, which I did not say, Ayami Kazama. It's based off of her own experiences of trying to get pregnant, getting pregnant, and then being like, actually, I don't even know what I'm doing. So I thought it was like really cool there too, because it's based off of the author's own story. And she highlights that pretty well. It's a black and white. You can see, and it's pretty silly too. Like, her husband is pretty he's kind of depicted as perverted in the story, which I thought kind of like played out really well, because he's like at some point, if I can share just a little bit of the plot line of the story, at some point, or at the very beginning of the story, she outlines that they're having trouble getting pregnant, right? Like, so they're having some issues. And the way that person just pulled up next to me was ridiculous. Anyway, I'm showing the back of the book because I'm used to holding it the other way. Look. But the author of the book, she's highlighting and sharing that they're having some issues getting pregnant. And so in the way that's just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Like, they have to kind of put in a little bit more attentiveness and time, and like there has to be specific windows and things like that. And so it's funny because it's like, because of that, sex is and like the initiating of the the baby making process is like, it's kind of very offhanded in the book, or it's like she presents it in a way that's like, drop your pants, right? It's 6 p.m. We gotta get this popping. Like, right now is now or never, right? And the husband is pretty much like, he's kind of like turned on by all of the strictness of it. So I thought it was just it's very silly. It's a little bit more, I guess, for mature readers, but it was really funny in that way. I really appreciated that. People that's why I don't like being in the car sometimes. People be walking. Lock my door. Like I know some. Okay, so yeah. Really, I would keep this on the shelf. I really I have to be honest and say, like, because of this kind of read, because of this kind of read, like, it doesn't take me long to read it, but I can get kind of like tired of it. Like, the humor is great, but I get a little flippant and I need to read other stuff or like other material. And so it kind of took me a second to like actually finish this, but I would have it on the shelf for the simple fact that, like, it's all very intriguing at the very least, and it's a fun thing to read. It's very funny, but there's also like some pretty heartfelt moments in there where it's just like, you know, like really trying. And I guess if you're a little introspective like me, you could be like, you know, I really don't know that process, right? Like, it just happens, and then like all of these changes are happening, or like just, yeah, like, you know, the I always think about this, but like the scariness of actually being a parent, like the scariness, or just kind of like all of the feelings that can come with being a new parent, and taking up the role of parenting in any way that folks have and will do. So I just thought that was like in the midst of the humor that was added in there, and I really appreciated that as part of the book, because it did make me, my introspective self, like really consider that, like it. And I mean, I like children, and I really like working with kids, and the birthing process definitely terrifies me, but to kind of have that outlined in this like very humorous way, for this person, Ayami Kazama, I would have it on the shelf just to, you know what I'm saying? It's fun to kind of like consider at the very least. So yes, that's I Don't Know How to Give Birth Once More by Ayami Kazama. Alright, the next book is Chicken with Plums, and I picked this one up too, by Marjane Satrapi. I need to read these more. And another author, an author of Persepolis, so they wrote other things. But Chicken with Plums, and I picked this up pretty much because, let me be more clear about the book, right? I picked this one up because truly I liked the cover. I liked how mellow I was like, this sounds interesting. And Chicken with Plums, I like, sometimes I just like to pick up off the title. I really did like the title intrigued me enough. I didn't really even read inside the inside flap to see, because, you know, this is another graphic novel, I should say that. Yep. But like, you know, in the inside flaps or whatever, it talks about, summarizes the book and like, and all of those things. And so I did read like the author profile when I first picked it up, and I was like, that's pretty interesting. And also, like, when I flip to a random page, I also pick up like graphic novels based on if the animation intrigues me, and I really like this. This is also a black and white situation, and I don't know, I appreciate this artistic style for some reason. But this is a book about, and I'm just gonna kind of like look inside the inside flap to see if it can summarize it better than I can. Okay, yes. So this is a story about, let me just read it from where it is. We are in Tehran in 1958, and Nasir Ali Khan, one of Iran's most revered tar players, I'll just keep reading, discovers that his beloved instrument is irreparably damaged, so it cannot be repaired, right? Though he tries, he cannot find one to replace it, one whose sounds speak to him with the same power, with passion, with which his music speaks to others. In despair, he takes to his bed, renouncing the world and all its pleasures, closing the door on the demands and love of his wife and his 4 children. Over the course of the week that follows, his family and close friends attempt to change his mind, but Nasir Ali slips further and further into his own reveries. Flashbacks and flash forwards with unexpected appearances by the likes of the Angel of Death and Sophia Loren, from his own childhood through his children's futures. And as the pieces of his story slowly fall into place, we begin to understand the profundity of his decision to give up life. So this was a very interesting read. I did not read that internal flap when I first picked up this book. But I don't regret picking up this book at all, because once again, my introspective self, and the whole reason why I like reading, right? Really kind of, when I was reading this, it was just like, this is very, very interesting. So if that whole flap, me reading that flap, didn't make sense, essentially this fellow here, Nasir Ali, was a tar player, was really in love with the sport, specifically in love with the tar that he played on for years as a tar player. It broke by someone in the story, and he was on a search to find a new tar player, or a new tar to play on. And in his search, he couldn't find one that was exactly like the tar that he had. And so with that, he decided that he was going to give up on life completely and die. I'm done. If I can't have this thing, then I'm done. And so as he's making this decision, the story is weaving through moments of his life that, with what he has left without his tar, it's weaving through those moments and kind of painting a picture maybe why Nasir Ali chose this thing, chose to give up his life in this moment. And that's just, I don't think I have formulated thoughts on that just yet, but I think it was just an interesting way to tell the story. Like, I think it was such an interesting story in itself. And then, like, how they outlined it in the story, which I think I showed a page. Let me see. I think I showed a page where, get this out the AirPod, right? Like, over the course of the week, right? Like he's really just, like, sitting in that choice and in that decision, and just kind of like all of the thoughts that he is having around making this decision, or all of the memories or the flashbacks and the flash forwards, which is also interesting. Like, what do I have to look forward to, right? And so, like, all of just the things that kind of come with that. And he did pass away in that week. So, that choice and that decision was a strong one, and that's why I think that this story was, like, very, like, whew, that was interesting. That was very interesting. And to say it is a true story. But it is, now I'm questioning, I'm like, how did this person know of this story? But I think that I read that they were related somehow. I believe so, but do not quote me on that, because I may be very, very wrong. Yeah, I don't know. I know that the story is true, however, that this was a choice that Nasir Ali Khan made and followed through with completely. And maybe it's a common story. Maybe I need to do a little bit more research. But yeah, Chicken with Plums, it was very interesting. I would definitely have it on my shelf, though I don't think, maybe for someone else this could be like something that they'd pick up off the title, but this would be good to kind of like add to a theme, or like a theme of conversations around different kind of topics that this book hits on. And just, I would be interested to hear other people's considerations about this for sure. So, Chicken with Plums by Marjane Satrapi. I wonder how it's really pronounced. All right, so my last one that I'm going to do in this particular BB Reads is the graphic novel adaptation by Damian, Duffy, and Jennings. Their adaptation of Octavia E. Butler's novel Kindred. And that's this. So I think I said I need to say like how thick they are. And if I could just go back really, really quick. Boom. This is, I don't know how to give birth. So this is like the standard size for manga usually. Maybe sometimes it would be a little bit less. But not a thickie. I think it's like, at least in terms of like how often, in 153. And graphic novels are easier in my opinion, just because there's pictures to go through. But sometimes I do get stuck on the pictures and like how they're animating the scenes in the storyboard. And Chicken with Plums is pretty thin, I think. But you know, it depends on how much you can withstand reading. But yeah, Octavia E. Butler's novel Kindred was adapted into a graphic novel by Damian, Duffy, and Jennings. And for a little bit of context, I read Octavia E. Butler's Kindred in its original novel form. And I keep saying this, I will have to at some point go back. I will have to at some point go back to do a BB read. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. I will have to go back to doing a BB reads on books that I've read in the past, especially some of like my favorite ones. Like I never did one on Children of Blood and Bone. I haven't done one on Kindred or Parable of the Sower, or what's my favorite one, and it keeps calling out to me on the shelf too, the Book of Phoenix, and the next book in line with that one, which is I think like Who Fears God or something like that. Those books were really good. It's another one that just came to mind. Keisha's House was really good too. But those are like some of like my favorite books that like I even still think about all the time, and they come up to me often. Those are like, if I specifically the Book of Phoenix, if I had to like have something that would be very close to a sacred text for myself, the Book of Phoenix would be that book for me. No doubt that book would be the book for me. So I have to at some point go back and talk about those books, but that's not for today. So I did read this, like I said, in the novel form, and then also Octavia E. Butler has another book called Parable of the Sower, where they also did a graphic novel adaptation to it, and I'm very grateful for them. And I will say that about this book too. The graphic novel adaptation, for someone who really likes the pictures and stuff, and like it can bring a story to life that was already very vivid. I think that both Parable of the Sower and Kindred are very vivid stories, and they're very memorable stories. Honestly, it's very she does a really good job. Octavia E. Butler is many things, and just a great novelist, a great writer, just a great like she knew what she was doing when she was putting that pen to paper. And so in reading her work, I came across her work later in life, but after hearing her name revered so much, And so reading her novels, it really is like she knew what she was doing, and she really could paint a really realistic picture in your mind, based off the words that she writes. And even though I think like her work gets classified as like sci-fi, and sci-fi gets classified as like something completely outside of our world and like futuristic in a sense, like she tapped into the time travel continuum in ways that like only niggas could, honestly. And in a way that really brought it forth for us in time and through time. So that's my honoring of Octavia E. Butler at this moment. But yes, so the graphic novel adaptation, this book, Kindred, is about, which, okay, I said all of that and didn't even say or get into talking about the benefits of this, or not the benefits, the storyline of this book, right? So this book is about, I think it's set in like the 80s or the 90s, possibly. And I should know that. And so many thoughts are coming to my mind. The person who wrote Book of Phoenix also did a foreword in this book for Octavia E. Butler. Very wonderfully written. Very glad. But this book is set in 1976. Perfect that I found that so easily. But it is a black woman, and she is settled into the timeline of 1976, California. And out of nowhere or randomly, she starts to get transported back into the past of like living on a plantation by someone in her lineage. I can go into that whole thing, but she gets transported back into the past and into living on a plantation. And so what happens in this world, because she has actual direct ties to this world, happens to her, like it carries even into, come on, Octavia E. Butler, it still carries into the present where she is now. And so when she's in this past world, she can be there for days, years, months. But in the present world, in the present 1976 world, she'll only be gone for like 8 minutes. But she would have had to live her life as an enslaved person on a plantation where they did not like, where there's all kinds of dynamics going on, from just where she exists in the present to like that is so different from the past that she's being transported back to. And so her navigation of that is very interesting. And what's even more interesting, and this is a little bit of a spoiler of this book, but I think like, I don't think it would take away from reading the book, is that her partner in the present time is a white man. And so at some point, not only does she get transported back, but they're like, he's holding on to her at some point, and when she has to go back, he goes back with her. And so it's just like, then you have to kind of like change your dynamics, or like adapt your dynamics to this world, because it is absolutely beneficial to your survival. It's absolutely beneficial to like, you got to make it past this. And granted, there is a part in this where there is a part in this where if she is experiencing a certain level of pain or fear, whatever, she can get transported back to the present time, to her present time. But it is very dependent, and it's not really consistent. So yeah, she's up against a lot of factors, and up against a lot of dynamics, because even though, you know, and I don't want to give too much away from the book, because it's like, but I feel like you reading this would just be so surreal, right? Like it kind of, it time travels you in a way. Like, you kind of time travel with it. So yeah, in the I can't even say in the best or the worst ways possible, but in the ways that's like, not gonna lie, this book can be very heavy. But I think what Octavia E. Butler does well in a way, and it's not to like make it lighter, or I wouldn't even say what she does, but what the graphic novel adaptation does is it kind of, maybe it could make it worse. But it kind of, for me, I'm gonna say for me, it kind of like cools it off just a tad bit to make it digestible. But yeah, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but yeah, they have to be holding on to each other in order to like transport back and forth. But like, once again, like, they can't have this kind of relationship like in this timeline. So that kind of thing could be, it can just be problematic. So then what if someone goes home, and then what if someone comes back? And mind you, when they're back in the present time, they have no control over how many years have passed since they've been back. So even though it would be 8 minutes or an hour or a few days in the present, it could be years in this time frame. So like, if someone is left there and someone is coming back, like, that's an extension of a life that's being lived. And you know, you gotta hold out and hope for the best. But it's wild. This story is very, very wild. And so I hate to be like, I love it, but it's really great storytelling, and it's really great. Like, I always think it's great storytelling when it's like, I don't know, it can ignite those introspective parts of myself, but it can just, I feel like, make the connection stronger between the world that we exist in now and the present, which is beautiful, and the world that we exist in. It can make sense of our worlds. I always think that great storytelling is about, and shout out to Zora Neale Hurston for helping that kind of understanding come to mind. But when it can really make sense of the worlds that we exist in and occupy, and the worlds that have existed long before we ourselves got here. I think that that's one of the really great factors about story, or that's one of the things that I say is, why do these people be running up in this parking lot like this? Have I ever said that is my pet peeve, when people drive in the parking lot too fast? Okay, anyway. But yeah, I think that denotes great storytelling for me, when it can speak to the world around me in a way that maybe I haven't considered before, or maybe that I have, but in a way that is unique to the story, unique to the unique stories that exist here. So yeah, Kindred by Octavia E. Butler, adapted into a graphic novel. And I will show, because I'm like, it's cool. Like, it cools it off a little bit. But I definitely think that it's their animation style too that does this. So even though, and it's just, once again, that's really good storytelling. Like, thinking about color choice, and yeah, it makes it brings like the honesty to the page, but with a sense of like altering perspective. I don't know, I have to find better language around that. But yeah, this animation style definitely does well for the story. But I'm always interested, and I think like this should happen more often, if I'm being very honest. That it doesn't have to be one person who does these things to a kind of story. Now, granted, this would have to be to the author's discretion, and Octavia E. Butler is not present in her own voice, at least in this moment, to speak on whether or not that's what she wants done with her work. But sometimes I think that, like, I would love to see different animation styles around the same book of text. Like, even just, this is very random, but, like, how Beyonce came out with that REM song? And I love her version of it. And I also like Ariana Grande's version of it. Like, I did. And I like other people's versions of it. It's, like, not in that caliber. And I think, like, that should be okay. Like, I don't want to go on too many rants, but, like, that's kind of like the art of sampling. And I'm just going to quote that from Susie B. Analog's class. But, right, like, that's the art of sampling, or like, the origination of sampling. But, yeah, liked this book, and I would love to see it, once again, just in different animations, to see how to bring this kind of story to a page. I know we got some digital media people out here, so I would love to see it. I mean, I don't have to see it in a movie. I think live action movies around this would actually be kind of they would be too eager to do something like this. But but folks, in terms of, just kind of painting that story out in this way, and how, I don't know, that story can speak to all of us in many different ways. But I will end this here. This is that was the last book that I read for the graphic novel series. I hope this was fun for you. And if you so happen to read any of these novels and you want to talk about it, discuss it, put your thoughts out there as well, please feel free to do so. I absolutely love to talk about works, or talk about reading, and all of the things that reading can bring to us, the blessing that reading is. Which is why this is under Beauty and Honey. Alright, so if that is all, I will see you next time.